Um, I'm not a writer, so I don't have a writing question, but there were a couple of things that me and my friends were seeking clarity on with regards to your Justice League run and certain
Hmm.
aspects that were included in it. You didn't write this for this first question I have. You didn't write this specific issue. It was actually James Tynion. If you don't have an opinion on it, or if you guys weren't kind of going in the same direction with it, totally feel free to pass. But so, been a lot of debates about this. In Justice League 27, the Justice League and World Forger they go to nil from Final Crisis, and World Forger talks about his brother Novu kind of splintering into many aspects after Crisis on Infinite Earths, and he kind of seems to imply that the monitors from Final Crisis were those aspects that they were like descendants of Novu. And that has kind of been one interpretation. Some people have argued that. I was wondering, do you have an opinion on that relationship, or do you know much about that?
I I think I know the answer, but like, why don't I just like call James and ask him? Just hang on a second,
Oh, that'd
because
be so cool. Oh, I would love that. Thank you so much.
let me see if he's there. I don't know if he's there, but we talk like 10 times a day, so he might be there.
Okay, I love it. I'm such a huge fan.
That's awesome.
Hey, brother, what's up? So I have a weird request. I am doing my hero initiative. Doing my hero initiative Q&A right now, and one of the questions was actually for you from an issue of your Justice League, and I did not know how to answer it. It's specific. It's about like the monitors and and that. Is it okay if I answer it with them from you? Can I relate it to you? Or they're awesome. Everybody here is awesome, so it's all friendly. But yeah, it's not like a you suck question or whatever it is. Like it's a clarity question. So can I put you on speaker or whatever? Or do you want? I mean, I could FaceTime you so you could see them if you want, or whatever. I'm gonna put them on. Okay, I'm gonna put you on speaker. Hang
Awesome.
on. Are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, great. See if you can hear. So I'm gonna let him ask the question.
Hey, James, my name. Can you hear me all right?
I can.
Okay. I had a small clarity question about Justice League 27. Um, so it's about when World Forger and the Justice League are very early in the issue. They visit Nil. Superman remembers it from Final Crisis, and World Forger talks about Novu, his brother, splintering into these many aspects after Crisis on Infinite Earths. And he kind of seems to imply, it's not stated directly, but he kind of seems to imply that those aspects are the monitors of Nil from Final Crisis, that those are his like descendants maybe. I was wondering if you could clarify that relationship. I'd be really interested to hear that.
Yeah. So basically, and this is the intent, but the caveat I always give this stuff is that because it's something that you can read a few different ways, and unless a creator makes it absolutely canon on the page, this is my interpretation of the events. So that is my above and beyond caveat, especially when it comes to like the high level cosmic stuff. But the way that I saw it working is that you have the original monitor, Novu, and then he, after Crisis on Infinite Earths, split into
Hey, I lost you there for a second.
killed. I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Oh,
I lost you.
he said after Crisis on Infinite Earths, Mara Novu was killed, or he split into different aspects.
Yes.
And those
Yeah.
were the monitors from Final Crisis.
Final Crisis.
Yes. The idea is that when the single universe split back into a multiverse, that created all of the different monitors that first showed up in, I think it was Brave New World, and then showed up in, or was delved into further in Final Crisis.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Since I have you, do you mind if I ask one other question? Is it okay? They're pretty quick.
Sure.
He also said in that same scene, Marnovu said that Nil was formed with the current universal structure. And some people thought that Nil was like destroyed at the end of Final Crisis because he kind of had that fade to white was kind of vague. Is this the same nil that we know, or was it destroyed and then recreated? In your opinion?
I think that this is meant to be the same nil, but there is no life left on nil. So whatever the destructive force eliminated all life left there, but then Novu went back there to hide, until he was found in that storyline.
Awesome.
And Grant also like chimes in and lets us, like, gives us, pointers and also approval on stuff a lot. So I talk with him relatively frequently, at least a few times a year while we're working on the stuff. So yeah, so nothing is like done in a way that's meant to, upend anything he wanted to do.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you, James. Thank you, Scott. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, James. That was awesome.
Thank you. You're not on speaker anymore. I owe you for calling in. I know you're to dinner with Sam, and I will speak to you soon.
Oh, my bad. I'm really sorry.
Okay, brother.
No.
All right, bye.
That was James. What's his last name? I'm sorry.
Tynan.
Oh, okay.
He's like, James, by the way, he was one of my students, like, back when it was so long ago now. He was in college, and I was, like, just beginning. I wasn't even in comics yet when he was first my student, so it was like 13 years ago. And he just had the best story sense of anybody. And then when he graduated, and I was looking for somebody to kind of run stuff by, I was sort of like, do you want to help me out? And do you want to, will you look at some of this stuff? Because I trust your opinion, especially when I got into comics, because he has such a great story sense, And then watching him become like, he's literally like my favorite working writer now. When your student like surpasses you, it's the best feeling in the world. So I'm so proud of him and what he's doing on Batman and everything. So
that's cool. Stuff. Thank you for calling. That was awesome.
Yeah.
And I really like the Sixth Dimension. So, in Multiversity, which Grant made, we got that map. I was wondering if you could sort of, your vision for the Sixth Dimension relative to the map, what kind of was your take on that? What kind of were you going for with that?
Well, I spoke to Grant about that. The hard thing is, it was funny because it was like, I was talking to him about it, and I was like, I want to visualize the map, and he's like, well, the map is always a pain in the ass because none of it would be spatial or time based. Do you know what I mean? So absolutely. There really isn't a way to do a map when you're talking about a realm that's beyond imagination, or imagination that's totally counterintuitive. So it's hard to place that layer. The way that I like to think of it, even though again it doesn't really make sense geographically, was that it existed towards like, because if the Sixth Dimension is the place where beings that exist beyond our imagination, that are capable of things that we can't fathom, sort of form, that it would be almost towards the top where, above, it was at the top of the sphere. So it was almost like the beings that wind up coming down, that are responsible for sort of writing the rules of things, wind up coming down from the top in that regard. And then planets that come up from the dark bubble up through the House of Heroes and all of that, from the dark multiverse into the main multiverse. And the House of Heroes kind of stands at the center of it.
Okay.
And at the top, and it's sort of like, it's almost spherical. So I see it, I mean, it's not just like it's a realm. It's sort of like it exists out here where it's more for, if things that aren't supposed to die or are killed, they kind of come back through that. And they're responsible for forming the sort of major laws and rules of what's going to come into the multiverse from that outer realm. Almost like not a bubble wrap, but like a kind of layer.
Like a dome?
Spherical layer. Yeah, like a spherical layer that's around it before the source wall.
And that's around the whole thing, like the source wall and the monitor.
Yeah. The source wall to me is the actual boundary of it before it was broken.
Okay, before it was broken. So it's kind of over, like you have the sphere of the gods and Nil, and it's just kind of like that, kind of like a, I don't know, like a perch for the top beings.
And there's no ruler of it or anything like that. It's sort of like something that they wind up, if somebody is killed that shouldn't be killed, that needs to exist in our universe, they kind of reform there and come back through and can take, if the whole thing is in jeopardy and breaks, like the source wall breaks, that's the protective membrane around it where you're going to sort of reform the structure of things. That's why, because the source wall broke, it was accessible.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's how
it's almost like the emergency. It's like the emergency layer that's like the
keeps everyone else out.
Yeah, it's sort of like the jelly that goes around everything, where it's like if one of the major beings dies that shouldn't die, they reform there, come back in. But if the source wall breaks and the universe falls apart and they have the chance to rebuild it, they rebuild it from that. It's almost like not a control room, but like a kind of triage, triage room, like a layer like that.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so that's sort of why World Forger came back, even though it was said that like Barbados killed him at one point. And
yeah, exactly. That's where he was reforming. That's why he was there.
Okay, so cool.
So if like Barbatos or any of the kind of super cosmic beings died, they would be there, and then you could either pull them and trap them in the source wall, or they could come down into the multiverse.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and by the way, someone might take it, write it a different way, and then they're right. So whatever it is, like it really is. I think the biggest point I would try to make about this stuff is that we really do care about it a lot. Like James and I and Josh, when we do metal and we're doing death metal now, like we reread all of the stuff. I talk to Grant, we talk to anyone that we can speak to about, the rules and regulations, the deepest DC fans in editorial there about it, because we don't want to step on anything. But the fun of it is to try and find the pieces you're inspired by and the additive. No one's trying to break anything or detract from the DC universe. It's all about adding to it. So the idea is trying to say, well, yes, the source wall was the boundary, but if we go past it, can you create something that gives an equal sense of mystery, awe, all of that, and then creates a mythology that's only going to keep that. That's what Grant was saying. We were talking, and he was like, if you break the source wall, you got to put something on the other side of it that's equally, sort of wondrous and terrifying. And I was like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm going to. And he's like, let me guess. He was like, they break the source wall, and then on the other side is Marvel Comics. And I was like, oh, if only. If only we could do that. If it was like the source wall breaks at the end of Metal, and then you see the Silver Surfer. You know what I mean? Like, and it's the beginning of the DC Marvel crossover. I'd do it in a set. I'd write Batman in that. I'd do that. I would do that. But
Great question.